If you ever hear a collective groan rattle the walls of an English classroom, it's probably because someone has mentioned the name Shakespeare. Most people wonder why studying Shakespeare is even relevant to us today, especially since his plays seem like pages upon pages of doth thee this and ye old that. But when we dig past all that language and confusion, we find that Shakespeare actually gives us a deeply profound insight into human nature. Or in other words, he shows us what makes us us. Of course, Shakespeare doesn't achieve this alone. No, in fact, if we look at many of his famous tragedies, we see that a lot of his inspirations, perspectives, and musings can be traced back to a single book, the Bible. Don't believe me? Let's take a look at the twisted tragedy of Othello. Othello tells the story of a valiant and brave war hero as he is turned against his lover and driven to his demise through the sweet manipulation of his cunning friend. Although the story just sounds like another dramatic soap opera, it is through these very characters that Shakespeare personifies different facets of human nature. Iago, the friend, is Othello's closest and most trusted advisor, often referred to as Honest Iago throughout the play. To an Elizabethan audience, Iago would have immediately gained favour, as he is initially introduced as the common theatre archetype, the humble soldier. However, this title soon proves to be false in Iago's soliloquies. Through Iago, Shakespeare examines the depraved and sinister recesses of the human heart and our culpability for evil. To communicate the extent of Iago's evil, Shakespeare goes as far as to draw direct parallels between Iago and Satan. I am not what I am inverts the famous phrase in Exodus 3:14 of the Bible, where God says, I am what I am. So in flipping this phrase, Shakespeare represents Iago as the antithesis of God and magnifies Iago's evil and deception. That brings us to Othello. Valiant Othello, as Shakespeare dubs him, is the hero of the play. However, it is through Othello that Shakespeare personifies the universal struggles of everyday people. You see, despite being respected and loved by all around him, Othello struggles deeply with his insecurities surrounding being a Moor. So exploiting this insecurity, Iago's deception leads Othello readily down a path of jealousy, murder, and betrayal. It is through this betrayal that Shakespeare alludes to another biblical character, Judas. Like Judas, Othello becomes so blinded by his insecurities and desires that he betrays the very one he loved the most and kills her. Therefore, through Othello, Shakespeare represents emotional struggles of insecurity, identity, and jealousy that are experienced by everyday people. Although people might look at Shakespeare and call it confusing, archaic, or just plain boring, we can see that Shakespeare gives us an opportunity to take a look at ourselves and the world around us. And we might just find that things that we might find irrelevant are more relevant than we know.